Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be at work in the Patty Hearst case. Other questions here include, was Patty Hearst actually guilty? And did she have Stockholm syndrome? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. So first I'll take a look at the timeline of the crimes, then the trial, and then move to the mental health and personality factors. So starting with the timeline. Patty Hearst was born in San Francisco, California in 1954. Her grandfather was the founder of Hearst Communications, William Randolph Hearst, who was the inspiration for the 1941 movie Citizen Kane. February 4, 1974. Patty was a sophomore at the University of California, Berkeley. The 19-year-old lived in an apartment with their 26-year-old fiancé, Stephen Wheat. Three members of the so-called Symbionese Liberation Army, the SLA, entered her apartment, assaulted her and her fiancé, and kidnapped her. Where did they get the name SLA? Evidently, the name Impulsive Narcissistic Criminal Squad was already taken. The SLA had selected Patty because of her family's wealth and political influence. The group's leader was a man named Donald DeFries. He had escaped from prison in March of 1973 and formed a group so he could start a revolution. The group had a number of goals. They were kind of disorganized. They wanted to close prisons, ban monogamy, and close all institutions that supported capitalism. The group made some demands of Patty's father, Randolph Hearst, leading to a food giveaway that was hampered by logistical problems. According to Patty, she was kept in a closet, threatened, sexually assaulted, and essentially she was instructed that she needed to join the group or she would be killed. On April 3, 1974, the group released a communication that indicated Patty was joining them. She had chosen to stay and fight with them as opposed to leaving. So it made it appear as though she had the option to leave. Patty now joined the group and the commission of various crimes. On April 15, 1974, the group decided to rob Hibernia Bank in San Francisco, California. They selected the target because it had a security camera. Hearst was caught on that camera carrying an M1 carbine and assisting in the robbery. So the idea here is that they wanted to show everybody that they had churned Patty Hearst into a revolutionary, that no one was safe. They could even take this heiress and make her into a criminal. May 16, 1974, Patty, William Harris, and his wife Emily Harris traveled in a van to a sporting goods store in Inglewood, California. William shoplifts from the store and is tackled by the manager. Patty steps out of the van, where she was waiting for the other two to finish their business in the store, and she fires several shots at the store sign, forcing the manager to take cover and allowing William and Emily to escape. The trio left town and dumped the vehicle. It had a parking ticket in the glove box that they intended to pay. This ticket had the address of the SLA hideout, forcing the members to move to another house. So I guess denying the city revenue from that parking ticket would have been unacceptable, but bank robbery was okay. I wonder how that discussion went. Did somebody say, "What? You're not going to pay that parking ticket? That's taking things too far. Once we cross that line, there's no going back. I didn't sign up for this. Let's go rob a bank." Seems like an unusual set of priorities. The next day, an anonymous phone call resulted in over 400 Los Angeles police officers surrounding the house that the SLA had just taken over. The group members opened fire and kept the police pinned down for a while, but then the police fired tear gas grenades into the house. This led to a fire. Eventually, 6 of the SLA group members would die. Some died of inhalation, some died of gunshot wounds, and the group leader ended his life. Patty, William Harris, and Emily Harris were not in that house. They would hide from law enforcement for over a year. Patty was finally arrested on September 18, 1975, along with another SLA member. She listed her occupation as urban guerrilla. Now moving to the trial. Hearst was put on trial in January 1976. For much of the trial, she appeared tired and dazed, which may have been due to some medication she was being given at the jail. The prosecution's argument was pretty straightforward. They said that Hearst was essentially rebellious and looking for trouble. The SLA gave her a good opportunity to become the criminal that she always wanted to be. They argued that she willingly participated in the bank robbery. A mental health professional testified that Hearst was not in fear of her life during the robbery. They also said that Hearst had sex voluntarily with her kidnappers. So under this argument, Patty was eager to be a criminal. She just needed some radical group to come and kidnap her to unlock her potential. This is what they were trying to sell to the jury. The defense argument was not as straightforward. Her lead defense attorney was the famous F. Lee Bailey. He mounted a defense based on the idea of Stockholm syndrome, the concept that a captive can become sympathetic to their captor's cause. They argued that Hearst was kidnapped and traumatized. She was simply doing what she needed to do to survive. They showed pictures of the SLA members pointing guns at Patty during that bank robbery. The difficulty for the defense was that brainwashing was not recognized as a defense to bank robbery under federal law. They had to prove that she was acting out of an immediate fear for her life during the commission of the crime. Interestingly, it appears that Bailey turned down a prosecution offer that would have allowed Patty to plead guilty to a lesser charge and possibly just receive probation. March 20, 1976, Patty was convicted of bank robbery and using a firearm in the commission of a felony. But the judge died before the final sentence hearing. The new judge sentenced Patty to 7 years, saying that voluntary criminal acts must be punished. Later, Patty pleaded no contest in reference to the sporting goods store robbery. She only received probation for that case. Patty would only serve 22 months because President Jimmy Carter commuted her sentence in 1979. In 2001, President Bill Clinton granted Patty a pardon. After her release, Patty would get married and have children. She wrote books, she was active with charities, and she would appear in a few movies. She never resumed criminal activity. Now moving to the mental health and personality factors. Before the abduction, Patty had no criminal record and no history of mental health symptoms. It seems reasonable to believe that she was traumatized during her time being held by the SLA. After her arrest, she was evaluated by mental health professionals, even though her attorney advised her not to talk to them. She had difficulty expressing emotions, she reported nightmares, she was smoking heavily, and her IQ evidently dropped from a score of 130 to a score of 112. The standard deviation for an IQ test is 15 points, so 130 is 2 standard deviations above the mean, which means that Patty was exceptionally intelligent. 112 is almost a full standard deviation above the mean, and that's still quite intelligent. So I don't know if that difference really means a whole lot, except she was under a lot of stress and couldn't concentrate as well on that second test. The first test would be much more reliable. Although initially Patty had expressed her allegiance to the SLA, within a few weeks she had rejected them, so she was moving back to what would have been normal. Considerations about mental health played a key part in the trial. There were over 200 hours of testimony from mental health professionals. Really, the whole case hinged on mental health factors. It is believed that the jury's position before that testimony was that Patty was not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and maybe just plain innocent. One of the prosecution experts named Joel Fort told the jury that they should be skeptical of mental health professionals hired by the defense. He said those professionals treat everybody like a client and not a defendant. He said they really couldn't draw conclusions about Patty's state of mind during the time she was with SLA. Joel Fort evidently was exempt from his own theory, as he seemed to have an incredibly high level of confidence in his ability to assess her state of mind during that time. He said that Patty was an amoral person who believed that the rules did not apply to her. She had engaged in sexual activity with a former teacher, Stephen Weed. She lied to the nuns at her school to avoid an exam, and she experimented with illegal substances. So he argued these were the behaviors of a hardened criminal. He also argued that Patty joined the SLA because she hated herself, not because she was kidnapped, not because she was abused, not because she was threatened with homicide, but self-hatred. Eager to show off his recently acquired skills from mind reading school, one of the security guards at Hibernia Bank also testified about what Patty was thinking during the robbery. He said that based on her body language, she absolutely was a participant in the crime. She wasn't scared. She looked as if she knew what she was doing. She had a commanding presence, and she was full of curse words. The prosecution said that this behavior proved she was a common criminal. The jury appeared to be strongly influenced by Patty's demeanor. They said she looked like a robot. They also didn't believe that she was sexually assaulted by one of the SLA members named William Wolfe because a trinket that he had given her was found in her purse after she was arrested. So what about Patty's personality? Well, again, all I can do is guess, but just based on what we have available, she appears to have high openness to experience, mid-range conscientiousness, mid-range extroversion, high agreeableness, which could explain why she was influenced by that group, and high neuroticism, which could point toward the same behavior. Was she guilty of the crime for which she was charged? Now, this case is fairly controversial. A lot of people have strong opinions in both directions. Looking at it from the point of view of what can be proven, I think she was not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But was she actually not guilty? Was she truly innocent? This is hard to know. I think she was. She never committed another crime, so there's really no evidence here of psychopathy. I don't think she was a criminal just looking for a group to join. It appears that she just adapted to the stress of the situation. She was just trying to survive. This brings me to the idea of Stockholm Syndrome. Now, this is a controversial construct. It has a few other names other than Stockholm Syndrome, like trauma bonding, battered women syndrome, identification with the aggressor, and learned helplessness. There are a few problems with the construct of Stockholm Syndrome. It does not have a single agreed-upon definition, although typically it's described as having a few key characteristics: a positive bond with a captor, preferring to remain with the captor, so not trying to escape, and taking on a negative view of authority figures, family members, and friends. So it's more than just temporarily appeasing a captor. It's really a change of ideology. It's turning against the world and running off with that captor and engaging in whatever activities they approve of. Stockholm Syndrome is not actually a syndrome. It's not a combination of symptoms that form a distinct clinical picture. It's not a mental disorder either. It's not actually considered pathological, but rather a normal reaction. I think what happened in this trial is that everyone is looking for a mental disorder to explain what happened. Everyone was looking for a construct that had some distinct clinical course that could be identified. But what happened here was actually congruent with the circumstances. It was not indicative of dysfunction. Now, even though I think she's not guilty, I can appreciate the opposite argument. The concerning part is that Patty seemed to adopt the new ideology. When it was just her with William and Emily, she stayed for over a year. Stockholm Syndrome is not necessarily temporary. I think the durability of her transformation played a part in her being convicted. It wasn't a conscious adaptation to survive, or else she would have fled as soon as she could have. It was unconscious. People struggle to accept that something like that could remain unconscious. Whether Patty is guilty or not, this case really does highlight a tough question. How do we know if somebody has Stockholm Syndrome, or they simply made a decision to change? Sometimes people simply choose to do the wrong thing. So those are my thoughts on the Patty Hearst case. If you like this content, please subscribe to my channel and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.